Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of SuperFantaFi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural fantasy and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Wheel of Time, Season 3, Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with Rand and his squad and their side of things as they're making their way to the IO waste. And obviously, a lot of interesting conversations and developments come up. Obviously, Rand is training with Lon, which obviously Moraine doesn't see the point of that because it's like, why are you bothering with sword training when you have, when you can channel? Obviously, it's like, but it's that double-edged sword of obviously Rand doesn't want to channel too much, even as the dragon, but it's still the thing of you are the dragon. You need to learn how to channel. You need to be able to properly control it. I thought it was even beautiful the conversation they had later on, where it was this conversation of, he talks about like, because she understands the intoxication of, tapping into the true source and, being able to channel. But he talks about like this sweetness to it. He's just like, oh, I'm thirsty. And there's this wonderful pool of water right here for me. And it tastes so sweet, but it can also be so poisonous at the same time. It's like, you don't want to indulge in it too much because if you do, you're going to poison yourself. But Moraine, it's like, I won't quite understand that. But the thing is, she's like, I can't quite understand that with my circumstances. You being a man channeling, it's a very unique situation in that regard, and the double-edged sword of being the dragon and stuff. But what it also comes with is that element of you need to be able to channel. You need to learn what you're doing it so that you can understand the difference between the sweetness and the poison. I was like, it was a nice retort, but it's like, yeah, it's just because for Rand, it's like he feels like so much is out of his control, especially with the channeling, because it's like maybe it'll be this day, maybe it'll be 5 days from now, maybe it'll be a year from now. But the more he channels, eventually he's going to go mad and insane in that fear. And he says he's not afraid, but it's just like, yeah, it's just like, it's not even fear. It's like intoxication. You feel like you're constantly being drawn in by it. So it's understandable why it's like, for him, it's like he wants some semblance of control. So for him, that's why he's training with Lon. He's like, well, he listens to me, but also by having the sword in my hand, it's like the one thing it feels like it's easy to grasp. It's easy to feel like I have control over something in my life when everything else seems so, it's all about destiny and the prophecies, and then like so much is taken out of his hand, like how much free will you have in your own life. And it's like being able to grasp onto something, hold on to something solid that is within your control when you feel so out of control. It's very important. It's also really interesting too when you put that in connection with the Avienda conversation, because for her, she sees like, oh, he's wielding a sword. She kind of sees that as useless too. I don't know if that conversation was necessarily about the channeling and all that. I think that was more so about like, right, the IEO have their way of, and she's like, oh, sword won't really serve you any, that it won't serve him when it comes to hunting, I guess, is kind of like her perspective. And it ends up being this interesting conversation about how the IEO view Rand versus how like everyone else views him as the dragon, because she's like, you guys are so concerned about him being this savior or this destroyer, and for her it's like, our people, he's both. He's meant to kind of destroy us, and I guess it's almost like he's supposed to save us and destroy us. He's kind of our everything. And it's just like, the way she said it, and maybe I'm missing some of the, like, I didn't quite fully understand. It almost seemed like she was saying like, right, we're supposed to be destroyed, and because it's meant to be kind of our I don't know if it's almost like a we're being reborn from the ashes type of thing. I don't know if that's kind of what she was saying, like we won't all survive, like he's here to destroy us, but something stronger and better will be bred after he like basically leads us, after like we've been burned to dust and risen from the ashes again. Once again, that might be completely wrong on my part, but that was kind of my understanding of it, so I thought that was fascinating. But then we also have Lanfear getting inside of Rand's head, but not just his, also Egwene, because she wants to drive a wedge further and further. She wants to mess with Egwene just to push them further apart, because it's like, she's like, eventually, Rand, she's going to see you the way I see you, all that darkness in you waiting to come out. And it's like, she's like, the darkness that exists behind that farm boy smile of yours, because it is the thing. And it's that conversation from before too about he's not the same boy that Egwene wants him to be. It's like the way people treat Egwene, they're like, you see him only as the Rand that he was, and your refusal to kind of accept him as a Rand that he really really is. And Lanfear is like, well, are you really do you want Rand to be really himself, or you want him to is it I'm sure she sees herself on the opposite side of Moraine and Egwene, whereas like Moraine wants him to lean into being the dragon, Egwene wants him just to be Rand because she believes no matter what he'll always just be Rand, and then Lanfear wants him to be his darker self. So it's like he's being thrown. Funny enough timing because of the whole alignment system and Trails Through Daybreak. It's it's like Egwene wants the lawful side. You have Moraine kind of wanting him to be the gray side of things, and then Lanfear is just pure chaos side of things. So it's just interesting when you think about that alignment and what they all want Rand to be, and him trying to figure out who he really is when he himself is tearing himself in 3 different positions of who he wants to be. It's got to be kind of crazy once again with everything going on that it's Lanfear coming into your dreams, but it's still the thing of there was comfort in that. Like back when she was Selene and not before you found out she was one of the Forsaken. So there's that element to it, but also like her torturing. Well, it makes you wonder how much of the Rena stuff is just natural trauma, which I think it is, but I'm sure Lanfear is stoking the flames, or at the very least, that's already happening, and she's just like, oh, I'm going to be a bystander in this, because, like, I think that was her as Rena, like, just messing with her, because we saw, like, Lanfear's face before Rena's face, like molded over it, so it's kind of like, whether she's always there messing with Egwene, trying to drive them further away, or is it just this moment? It's kind of effed up. It's like, oh, well, you're playing, like, house with Rand, the woman he loves, you're over here torturing her at the same time. It's like extra effed up. But it's like, yeah, the duality of Lanfear. And they're also still completely unaware that the only person who knows the truth is Lan, that Moraine and Lan kind of gave and co-signed Lanfear, pushing them the way they did last episode. So, and it's going to be interesting. But also at the same time, Egwene had a dream in the desert, and I was like, oh, is this Lanfear wanting to talk to her alone? But it's like, no, an older Aiel woman showed up, but then they run into her later on. But I'm wondering what that was. I wonder, because she seems to be maybe a seer of sorts, because she sees, like, and when like the group shows up and they see like, oh, this is Rand, this is the one we're waiting for. But like, I don't know if she's like a seer of sorts and Egwene like tapped into her seeing a little bit, like there was an overlap. I don't know if that's a byproduct of Lanfear like doing what she was doing, and it kind of like caused some like cacophony of overlap between stuff that was happening at the same time, or whether that was like, because like she disappeared from the dream, because you would think like, oh, maybe it'd be Lanfear like fizzling away, but it was actually Egwene that did in that part, and then she ended up in that wasteland. So I'm wondering, is that something of Egwene's power, like surfacing of something unique that she'll be able to do? I don't know. It'd be interesting if we find out she can do something similar to Lanfear. Maybe not to the same degree, but I don't know what that is. Because even the old woman was like, you're not supposed to be here or something like that. So I don't know what to make of that. Because that could have just been her kind of tapping into, like, that could have just been like a seer thing, or maybe it was like in the regards of Egwene's kind of being a seer, or that lady's a seer and Egwene kind of tapped into it. I don't know what to fully make of that. But I'm excited to ultimately see where that takes us. Aside from that, we have everything that's going down in the tower. Obviously, at the beginning of the episode, we learned a little bit more about Elaine's mom. Her, when she, got the throne, brought peace, brought a war to an end, and then basically brought her enemies here, being like, okay, you guys subject yourselves to me, and then when it's all said and done, I'll forgive your crimes. We all did stuff that we did what we had to do at the time when we were at war, but all would be forgiven. And they all bend the knee to her, and then she slices all of their throats, because it's like, I can't have my children growing up when another secession war happens. We might as well nip that in the bud now. And so everything kind of fell under her reign as queen. So kind of that ruthlessness, but also just kind of like, yeah, you got to do what you got to do for what you perceive to be the greater good. But it's like, well, are you doing the greater good because it is the greater good? Or are you doing the greater good because you believe it's what's in the best interest for your children to never have to suffer through kind of something like that? Because eventually those people could always flip-flop, and turn against you. So you want people there from the beginning that you feel the need won't be so quick to slice your throat or the throat of your children. So she shows up, and obviously there's a little animosity between her and Suan. I It's interesting too. Like I was like, hey, I'm always excited to see Shore Agdashalu. It's just like, oh man, you see her, like, I think it's so interesting. I've just been seeing her more and more and more and more and more over the years, especially especially on the TV front. But I think that's so dope. I legitimately always get excited when I see her, like, or hear her voice when it comes to, some voiceover roles she's had and stuff. But either way, it's interesting. What was it? Eladia, I think. What's her character's name? Which is interesting to find out she's the person that Swan almost lost the Amelin seat to, which I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Especially like, so they've definitely got history. So it's like, oh, like Swan kind of looked a certain way when she stepped in. You're like, oh, that's what that history is. So I wonder what that is, and that resentment. Maybe there's resentment. Like, did she, like, why was it so close? I mean, maybe it's a thing of we were friends / rivals, but then it turned more tumultuous as the positioning of the Amelin seat came closer and closer and clearer. Or maybe it's like it would have been, like I said, I think the character's name is Eladia, but it's like it maybe might have been hers, but maybe Suan did some perceived foul shit that kind of led her getting the Amelin seat rather than her. Who knows? But yeah, like it's interesting. I was curious too, like how much of what went down in the tower is public knowledge. And to be fair, the tower has always been the tower, and it's always been quick to keep certain information to itself and never let it get out to the public. Because I was curious, like what went down in the tower, like how much of that's known. And it's like, it makes sense that you would never want that information out there because it will make the tower seem weak. Like, oh, people would try and strike at the tower if they think like, like certain things are slipping, and finding out that, oh, there's dark friends amongst the Aes Sedai, the Black Aja and stuff like that. It's like, you don't want that information out there, and they're keeping that away from Morgause, Elaine's mom. But like her and Eladia are trying to, like, all right, like no one is saying anything. Even Elaine is keeping her mouth shut because she knows the larger repercussions of it. It's like, yes, your mom wants to know what's going on in the tower just so that she can be prepared, but it's like you're torn between your allegiances to your home and your mother and your position as a daughter heir, but also your allegiances as a novice in the tower training to become an Aes Sedai. So it's like but in the end, Elaine chose her side because for her it's like, I've got my own path. I'm not doing this for you. Well, I'm kind of doing it for you, Mom. I'm kind of doing it for Suan, but at the end of the day, I'm doing it for me to forge my own path because everything I experience in this tower will help me grow. I mean, talking about everything she experienced last season, she's like, I helped heal the dragon, and there's so much I can learn here, and I have so much promise here that it could help me in the long run. It can prepare me for what's to come as the daughter heir when I eventually take the Lion Throne. Because it's like, we both know, Mom, that when it's all said and done, there is no guarantee of safety. Like, I can't just hide behind the palace walls and it'll be fine. Like, we're well beyond that. It is the thing of she's broadening her horizon. She's opening her eyes to everything out there, which is so interesting considering, like, her brothers were kind of having a similar conversation with her earlier in the episode about kind of like almost like naivety, I guess she has, of like, your view in the world is so small, so that leaves you vulnerable. But it's like, yeah, she's trying to overcome that vulnerableness, which, funny enough, that conversation of vulnerableness, because the Lion Throne is vulnerable because it's not just like the way the consort, Gabriel, he's not her dad. I guess he's almost a pseudo stepdad, I guess, in a lot of ways, because she doesn't refer to him as dad, but it's like he seems like a stepdad of sorts, but he's not stepdad. He's the father. He's a father that stepped up. So I guess with all that, he talks about how the people have kind of turned against her, and it's like the throne is a little more vulnerable. That's why she wants all of her children near her, because she wants to protect them, because it's like, if you're out of my sight, I can't guarantee you'll be alive. So, so it is a mother's selfishness because she has her obligations as queen and what she needs to do. So it's like, yeah, I'm also in ensuring that you, my daughter, will be alive to take the throne. but it's also like I just also as a mother I just want to keep you close so I can keep an eye on you because having no knowledge because everything was so tight-lipped about the what happened in the tower that they had no idea what happened to Elaine. So it's understandable why she kind of had to make this old grandiose position. But I also love that it's like the thing of when we're presenting ourselves a certain way as the Queen of Andor and then like the Amelin seat, but then like when we're alone there's a little bit of a change in a cadence in the way we talk to each other because they have to keep up pretenses in a lot of ways. But like the conversation they had at the end, she's like, oh, basically, if anything happens to my daughter, I will bring the entire army. And we'll have to see how neither one of us would want it to come to my army versus the White Tower to see who would come out on top. And even Suwan's like, no, we wouldn't want that which there's layers to that because it's almost like a thing of, Morgos is kind of like, oh, well, we'll definitely come out on top. But you can read Suwan's position almost like you can try, but I guarantee you it won't end the way you think it will either. So just thought that was kind of, once again, both of these mothers puffing their chests, especially when you think about the earlier conversation in the episode where it's like, oh, you are mother to children, yes, but they're not your actual children as like the Amelin seat. So like the difference of like, you're the mother in the name, like in name only, like a leader, not a proper mom. So you don't know the difference. But it's like, but Suwan countered that by being like, well, there are duties that both a mother and a leader have in common. So I just thought that was all fascinating. Kind of staying on the Elaine front, her and Nynaeve kind of got brought in to be, as Suwan puts it, the hounds. She wants them both to work to sniff out any other dark friends, Black Aja that might have been left behind. Once again, who's to say you wouldn't keep certain people there? That is the suspicion because you're like, you don't know who else to trust. These are the only two that she can trust to do this job. But they both recognize, yeah, but Suwan isn't telling us everything either because she caught Varen and what was it, Lyanna talking whispers about certain things. So there's just so many secrets in the tower, not just secrets in the tower from the outside world, but even in the confines of the tower, secrets are being kept from one another as well. So, but the problem is Elaine was initially supposed to leave the tower, which Nynaeve kind of took offense to that because I guess almost felt like, oh, is your allegiance is like, is there something going on with the throne? Which there was at the time, but I mean, there is, but at the time Elaine didn't know that, but it's still kind of a moot point of like, I think it's also like Nynaeve feels alone. I mean, at least she has Matt here, but I think she kind of had her beef, because she views royals in a certain way, which even, Elaine kind of brings up the irony behind that, considering like, well, you're the one that actually slept with an actual king, and she was saying that half jokingly, but also kind of throwing shots a little bit. But it's also like, yeah, you kind of didn't have much clap back to that because it's like, yeah, it is true. So, but obviously Elaine's situation from a royal standpoint, very different from Lon's situation from a royal standpoint as well. So, but yeah, she's still going to be sticking around, and she's going to go. Elaine is still going to go through the arches to become an Aes Sedai. She even claims to be like she's going to be the first queen to be Aes Sedai queen because her mother was accepted but never became an actual Aes Sedai. Because she has the ring and everything, which is fascinating. Speaking of Matt, he's enjoying his time in the tower, but his fun times kind of got shortchanged when the princess came, and it's like I'm sure like the woman he was looking for was named Clara. I'm sure because she's one of the people like, oh my god, the princes are here. So yeah, it's just kind of like, yeah, you were kind of like, because he was parading himself around as like this big time hero, and that kind of all got shimmered and dimmed, He is shallow like that, but it's also like, let's not forget Matt's also like distracting himself from everything because Rima investigated Matt's circumstances and told Nynaeve it's basically trying to heal Matt is like trying to bring back the dead. She's like, you might as well view him as dead right now because like they can't really fix the mind, and his mind is what it is, and eventually it's going to deteriorate into what? I don't know if it's going to be men channeling deterioration type of bad or what. Will he just be a crazy person? Who knows? Obviously, him and Min running into each other again. She had told of her seer prophecy of, okay, well, I don't know if seer prophecy would be the right word, but like her visions of the future where there is going to be more death. At least 9 Aes Sedai are going to die, and she doesn't know when it's coming, and that's motivated Suan even more to try and root out everyone. But I think that's the thing of it's going to be an eventuality. It's just a matter of when it happens, not if it happens. So even with Suan doing all that she can, I think even she will be blindsided. I'm also curious to find out if like Shure Agdashalu's character, like I said, Eladia, I wonder we're going to find out she's actually a dark friend, and if she is, that's interesting considering how close to the throne she is. She is an advisor and everything. So, but either way, I love the conversation with Matt and Suan later on when she gets him called in. I'm like, why would she want to talk to him? And it's about him parading around the horn because she's like, oh yeah, like the horn is nothing in anyone else's hands besides yours until your life comes to an end. He's like, wait, what? She's like, oh yeah, like the only way the horn will work is if someone kills you and the next person to blow the horn after you die can use the horn. And and she kind of basically in the most roundabout way just to kind of stick the knife in and twist it, being like, but you wouldn't go around boasting about that, would you? He was like, no, of course not. She's like, you wouldn't have some artist draw you with the horn, would you? He's like, no, I would never do that. She's like, right. So you would leave the horn in my keepsake, right? Keepsake. And he's like, right, of course. And I thought it was interesting. And she even says like, right, you remind me of my uncle. He was very much a gambler and just kind of had fun, would rather have fun than work. But he was the type of guy that when a building or whatever is burning down, he would go in over and over and over again, saving people, even if it meant sacrificing himself. She's like, are you the type of person that would go into a burning building? And Matt's just like, I'm not a hero. I just do what I got to do and did what I needed to do. But for Suan, she brings up, well, heroes are those who simply just did what they had to do. So I don't know if this is going to be kind of the awakening Matt's going to need to kind of get his shit more together, but we'll see how that shakes out. I am curious to see, obviously, with Min here in the tower, how that's going to play out. It's like, obviously, he hasn't forgiven her for everything last season. It's like, yeah, you kind of sold me out to a dark friend and everything. She's like, I'm sorry. It's like, well, no. She's like, I'm trying to apologize. She's like, you literally haven't said the words, I'm sorry. But she has now, so I mean, they hit it off, and it's like, even though it was kind of built off of some bullshit, there's something there where I'm like, I don't know if it will turn into anything intimate, but like that might be like a good friend who kind of, can join Matt when he's in his bullshit and kind of call him out for his bullshit, which his friends do too. But like, I don't know, I think it's going to be a very unique friendship or dynamic, whatever they've got going forward, if that relationship ever gets to a good enough place, whether it is romantic or platonically, so. And then finally we have Perrin's side of the story where him and the others are making their way back to Three Rivers. Or is it Two Rivers? I actually don't remember the name of the village now, but back to their village. Some interesting conversations come up because like Loyal is like too far away from somewhere he's supposed to be. And it's like, oh, the pain. But he's like, no, the pain is good because it reminds us, he's like, when you feel it in your bones, it reminds you of where you come from. It's almost like a connection, I guess, to your ancestry and stuff like that. But it's like, yeah, things kind of end pretty badly if you don't kind of check in and kind of recuperate. If you stay away for too long, it can turn bad. So we'll see what kind of becomes of that. But obviously the conversation about their home at one point in time, a very, very long time ago, being simply a great kingdom with a great army, and now all that rests there is a village full of farmers and herders, and it was interesting when Perrin came back, there was no fanfare. He did get a lot of stares, and I was like, what's up with that? Well, we find out the White Cloaks are here. So it's like, well, there's a lot, because it's like, well, you're drowning in still the regrets of, yeah, I kind of accidentally killed my wife. That sucks. And you're still haunted by that being back here. You were already haunted by it regardless, but now even more so. Now you find out the White Cloaks are here because they're helping out the town, because the town has been attacked by Trollocs, not to the same extent of season 1's situation, but still from time to time. So and I thought it was interesting how, was it Bane and Chie had the whole perspective of the difference between a lion and a bear. It's like, okay, sure, like the White Cloaks are protecting you from the Trollocs, but at the end of the day, you're choosing one belly of a beast versus the other. It's kind of like the same result. And they were even suggesting, like, well, why don't you fight back? And she's like, what, us farmers with our tools and stuff? It's like they don't have that instinct in them to, like, fight back. The few that did are not here anymore. Obviously, that being, like, our main crew. But yeah, they want to try and, like, let Perrin stay here for a bit and then bounce. But Perrin is willing to turn himself in because he's like, right, I did what they wanted. They're accusing me of. So if it means leaving everyone alone and the White Cloaks bounce, then I will, surrender myself. I'm curious to see, because even I was like, what do you do? Like, do you let the White Cloaks take you, and then what are you going to do? Bust out afterwards? Because wouldn't they still come back here after you? So I don't know if he's really thinking too much about, like, well, what do you want the end result to be in this situation? Also wasn't expecting him to run into Alana. I didn't even think about that because, like, the last time we saw her was when was it Invon? Her other warder died. So it's like, what are you doing here? And the others were worried about you, asking questions. But I think it's like, once again, it's kind of like you lost. I said limb last episode, but kind of like another piece of your heart. Considering, like, your heart, a fraction of your heart's gone now, and you can never, like, fully recover that. So it is a thing of, you probably want to get as far away from the tower as possible, considering, like, once again, you don't know who to trust. But it might also be the thing of, she's probably specifically out there looking for Leandrin, because Leandrin's the one that dealt the killing blow. So it's like, you're the one that started all this, your treachery, but also you killed someone I loved and held with such a, like, in such reverie and regard. So it's like, I've got it. I don't know if that's why she's really here, why she was out and about, because she is injured. And it's like, well, how did that happen? And they're like, oh, Trolloc. Well, because I think it's the thing of, they've got to try and figure out their new system, because at least her two warders, like, they worked in tandem. They were always a three, but now it's just two. And it's like, how do you bounce back? Your equilibrium is completely off. So it's like adjusting to only being the two of them now. It's like, trying to fill in that gap between themselves, I'm sure, is not turning out well. So I feel like just her being injured is kind of enough of its own, like, kind of a sign of, like, right, that duo is just trying to compensate for the lack of it being a trio. So I just thought that was just kind of an interesting element to it all. So we'll see where that ends up taking us as well. It'll be interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time you meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.